Broadcasting live from somewhere underneath the ground. Archaeology News. The news you can trust.
Alright, so given today's super long site visit to Easter Island, I'm just going to do one story for Archaeology News that's hit the headlines recently. And this is kind of from a different angle of stuff we've talked about before. Now, we're all familiar with the term microplastics, probably mostly associated with the oceans. It's an environmental problem. You may have heard there's that sort of big garbage patch in the middle of the Pacific, which I actually think is two different patches kind of swirling around, and a lot of that is plastics. In total, it's supposedly 3 times the size of France. So it's huge, and it's a big environmental problem. But research has found microplastics everywhere, in the atmosphere, in food, and even in the human body. Well, even archaeology isn't safe from this stuff, according to some new research published in the journal Science of the Total Environment. Now, in this project, some scientists from the University of Hull, archaeologists from York Archaeology, and an archaeologist from the University of York analyzed some soil samples taken from the northern English city of York. Well, this was a good spot from which to take samples because the city center of York has had continuous human habitation since Roman times at least. Now, the Romans founded a fort there called Eboracum, which supposedly was taken from the earlier Welsh of Eburacon, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, I don't speak Welsh. And the Romans founded that Eboracum in 71 AD, just within a couple decades of their invasion of Britain, so that's how quickly they made it up north. After the Romans left and the Anglo-Saxons came in, they sort of transliterated the name to Ephorwic, which should mean something like the yew tree market town. And then, of course, the Vikings stormed in, and they made York the center of Viking Britain, and they kind of bastardized the name to Jorvik. And one of these days, I'm definitely going to have to do a site visit to the Jorvik Viking Center because I've heard that is awesome, though a little bit difficult on your nose, but that's another story. Anyway, there have been many, many fruitful excavations in the city of York because basically any time anything is built, you have to have an archaeological survey, and pretty much they find stuff could be as old as Roman times. And here's the really depressing part. The project tested samples from 2 sites in the center of York, and these actually had been excavated in the 1980s. And they tested soil as far down as 7.3 meters or 24 feet. So that's a long way down all the way to Roman times. And they actually found microplastics down that far. Now, to be honest, when I first heard this, I thought, okay, that's not good. We've altered the environment. But from an archaeological perspective, who really cares? I mean, plastics can be separated from the organic matter, sort of sifted out, right? So it shouldn't really change anything.
Wrong!
In fact, as the project showed, these microplastics do alter the soil chemistry, and that can actually cause organic remains to decay. Now remember, how are organic remains preserved either in the soil under the ground or in water, like those bog bodies we talked about? Well, they're preserved because of anaerobic conditions, the lack of oxygen. And what's been found is that microplastics in the soil change the soil chemistry, and that might be able to introduce oxygen through chemical processes, which would lead to the breakdown of organic remains. Now, why this is such a big deal is, you remember sort of a golden rule in archaeology is the preference to preserve things in situ unless they're threatened by something like development. Well, now if microplastics in the soil will lead to a degradation of those remains, maybe we have to rethink that golden rule. More research needs to be done because the paper left it as a hypothetical. We know the soil chemistry has changed, but we don't yet know the effect of that on the organic remains. But the fact that this is a possibility is worrying. No positive spin here. We know that due to rising sea levels from climate change, a lot of coastal archaeology is threatened. Even remember from, I think it was my very first site visit to Cosquet Méditerranée, that's a subsea cave, which even though it's under the water is dry. However, rising sea levels are beginning to cause it to flood, and it will probably be flooded, in our lifetimes, which is why the replica of that cave was made to preserve it. So now we face yet another environmental threat. So yeah, consequences. Not even archaeology can escape the environment. Nothing can. Hey, if you like what you heard, give me that thumbs up below, hit that bell to subscribe, or if you want to support more independent archaeology content, consider contributing to my Patreon, where you can enjoy some exclusive members-only benefits and other goodies. Until the next below, hit that bell to subscribe, or if you want to support more independent archaeology content, consider contributing to my Patreon, where you can enjoy some exclusive members-only benefits and other goodies. Until the next dig.